the gold in California is in the bank in the middle of Beverly Hills, and somebody else's name. So if you're dreaming about California, it don't matter at all where you played before. California's a brand new game. Try to be a hero. Winding up a zero can scar a man forever, right down to your soul. Living on the spotlight can kill a man outright, 'cause everything that glitters is not gold. And all the gold in California is in the bank in the middle of Beverly Hills, and somebody else's name. So if you're dreaming about California, it don't matter at all where you played before. California's a brand new game. All the gold in California is in the bank in the middle of Beverly Hills, and somebody else's name. So if you're dreaming about California, it don't matter at all where you played before. California's a brand new game. A brand new game. Welcome, workers and friends, comrades and associates. Welcome back to Anti-Imperialist America. I'm your host, Dust James, the Marxist-Leninist truck driver. I'm in my very lovely, humble home in rural North Carolina. It is a rainy Sunday, and it is Father's Day. Happy Father's Day to all the dads out there. And today's show is specifically going to be around Happy Proletarian Father's Day, just like I did a Happy Proletarian Mother's Day chat. Please allow everyone to settle in, share this out, tweet this out, tell your friends about this. I'm going to make it public on the Facebook, share it out to a few places. Please be with me. Get in the comments. If you're watching this, please get in the comments so I can give you a shout out. Tell me how you're doing today. Ask me any questions. Tell me where you're coming from. I'll give you a shout out in the comments. Yeah, I wonder if y'all can hear the rain in the video. I'm going to go ahead and make this public on the face. Boom, it is public on the face. Right on, right on. Oh, I got an unnamed pale ale. Enjoying with y'all. If y'all are wondering about that song I sung at the beginning, All the Gold in California, I'm going to analyze it from more of a Marxist-Leninist, anti-imperialist perspective. That song really gets to the colonial imperialist core of the conquest of Aztlán and the Chicano people. The gold rush, you had people coming in from, the East Coast, traveling across expansive territories where people already existed, and then taking over a territory. People didn't have some of the gold rushers were well off, some were not well off, but the result was the expansion of a white supremacist empire. Even though it was in their material capitalism, always needing to expand, the idea of imperialism going back to the British empires. I'm not sure which one it was, but it's like the dude who wrote the Jungle Book. I don't remember his name. I could look that up. But he always go and say, why are these poor people demanding bread? They should go out and kill brown people in other countries. They should go out and kill the Indians and set up spot base there. And then they can exploit those people and send more money back to the British imperial homeland. This is the nature of capitalism and imperialism. Was it heaven on earth for the people that went in the gold rush? No. A lot of these fuckers died. But they basically took over and controlled, a part, more territory and land and people and resources for the benefit of the small class on top. The monopoly capitalist in this day and age, the imperialism. Before imperialism was capitalist colonialism. Before capitalist colonialism was feudal colonialism. And I think even Marx had some issues. But I think he changed it later at the end of his life, especially on the Irish national question. I think Marx was partly Eurocentric, and the fact that Marx said that colonialism was a good thing. It was taking people in feudalism and spreading capitalism. This was actually a very backward and incorrect view of Marx. And it wasn't until Lenin and Stalin, Stalin wrote about the national question, and Lenin said that imperialism of that time, maybe, I'm going to say whether Marx was wrong or right, but in that time period of Lenin, Marx was wrong. When capitalism became monopoly capitalism, aka imperialism, it was not helping to develop the, exploited nations. It was keeping those nations in poverty. The British, when they got to India, one of the first things they did was destroy the cotton mills and destroy in the industry there. And they rework countries, not for the benefit of those countries, but for capitalists and the monopoly capitalists. Not even for the not even really for the working class. You got the system of hegemony, where a worker in the imperialist core has it better than a worker in the global South. But the exploitation in the material system is being maintained primarily for the benefit of the imperialist. So maybe we can get back to the United States and that song, Golden California. There's also something else being expressed in that song. This idea of venturing out, seeing new places. A lot of people, when they, they're growing up maybe in a country town or maybe even a city, and they see, things are kind of limited. You got your same neighbors, you got your same environment. There's always this wanderlust. And I know I had that wanderlust. I can think of a few songs, country songs, that talk about wanderlust and wanting to explore and understand. I can think of the songs right. Here's a good one by Waylon Jennings. Drinking and dreaming, knowing damn well I can go. I never see Texas, LA, or Mexico. There's a lots of these. You think? I think Merle Haggard's "Mama Tried." I don't remember the first few lines to it. Man, that's a perfect one. I got to bring it up. I can't not bring it up. I know I did that one before. Mama Tried. Lyrics. First thing I remember knowing was a young, lonesome whistle blowing and a youngin's dream of growing up to ride on a freight train leaving town, not knowing where I'm bound. No one could change my ride. My mind, but Mama tried. There's another one. This idea of wanderlust and exploring beyond, it really lines up with the imperialist system. You join the military. That's a lot how they fun. What was it? FTA, fun, travel, adventure. Also, it was turned around in the 1960s to fuck the army. like James Fonda and other celebrities in popular counterculture and legitimate anti-imperialist culture. But I think the idea of wanderlust and exploration on its own isn't negative, is not negative, but is easily manipulated by the powers that be that expand imperialism. So, what I did counter recruitment, and I had a lot of wanderlust. I wanted to see things. I ended up doing truck driving, and I got to see all 48, been to Canada, and it was a hard life. I got a trade in, got my few years in. I got more than my few years, actually, and my ups and downs. I got a local job now. I got my family. I got my wife. I got my son. I got my brother and my sister and my dad living close to me. I got all these stories, all these places I've been. I can tell folks here. I can, talk for years to come. So I don't think wanderlust and traveling itself is bad on its own. But then if you're manipulated into traveling to, support colonialism, imperialism, it's definitely bad. A lot of the people, the gold rush itself, conquering Aslan, the military, but then you got stuff, and then corrupt businessmen, all that shit. I think driving a truck, that's exploring and being a worker, being exploited. I was able to satisfy the need without being directly a part. All our taxes go to finance the imperialist system. We gotta figure out, exploited people got to figure out a way of working within this system. Now, hopefully what I have done through the years is I found a way to work within this system on a trade. I'm part of the working class. I'm not the police or the military, which are directly part of the arms. They're not proletarian. They might come from the police and military, might come from the proletariat, but your class is a relationship to your means of production. And police and military don't produce anything for people. They're simply the arms and the repressive mechanisms of the state. But, a truck driver or a seaman, I actually had a dream. I wanted to get out on a commercial shipping vessel. I was in college. This was before I started driving trucks, and I'd spent several years in college. And I went up to see some comrades up in Boston, and I got to visit this immigrant neighborhood of Chelsea. And it was a big summer in my life, and I actually wanted to get. There was a man that I met through some contacts, and he was a commercial fisherman, and he told me that 3-4 months out in the water, you come home with $50,000-$60,000 in your pocket, cash money, $50,000-$60,000, what a truck driver makes in a year. What a lot of lower paid local truck drivers would make in a year. You can make in 3 months out on an international fishing boat. And I talked about how was life out on the water, and he said they would work. And this was a lot of Guatemalan friends. And he said you work out on the commercial fishing boat, and you'd have to, and when the fishing was good, you would have to stay awake for 3 or 4 days straight. And there was storms and all kinds of stuff. The majority of the people who are out on them waters have to stay up 3 or 4 days straight, would take cocaine, methamphetamines. They would go to international ports. They would find drugs, and they would use those drugs to stay awake and do the absolutely hard, barbaric work that is being a commercial fisherman. Now, given my current state, and my, slow money coming in, but, not too crazy work ethic. Maybe I'll work 50 hours a week, which is nothing compared to what I used to work on the trucking business. But you compare that with some of this international commercial fishing crews, and oh my God, you work for that money. You work for that $50,000-$60,000 for them 3 months. It sounds like a dream to some folks, but yeah, the way I heard it, so what I did was I went down there
to get I went down to the docks. I said, well, shit, fuck going back to school. I'm getting in debt in the school. I'm gonna go out in the water and be a commercial fisherman. So I go down to the dock and I get interviewed by the captain or whatever on the dock there. And he said, you ever been fishing before? I was like, sure. I've been fishing. My eyes suck at lying. Not a good liar. I was told by my Guatemalan friend, just lie and say you've done the fishing before. That's what we all did. And he could tell right through me. I think it's easier to lie when you don't speak the language and your remarks are being translated. It's probably easier to lie like that. But I lied out my teeth saying I had done commercial fishing. And I get this young boy with a southern accent. And he ain't done no fishing. So he told me, you can come out with us eventually, but we're going to have you work on the docks for 6 months. That didn't sound very fun. So I did not go out on the docks for 6 months to get out there. Shout out to my man. What is it? Shit, man. What's his name? Shout out to Mason. Mason is out on a fishing. I don't know if it's fishing. I think it might be freight. It might be freight. But Mason is out on a boat on the Great Lakes. And I have more power to him, young man coming up. That was actually kind of my dream. Never worked out. I did the concrete sea thing over the road. And I often tell this, when you get on the road, let's say you're doing a team over the road. I used to take cigarettes out of Virginia, carry them out to California. California, Seattle, Phoenix, Arizona. Used to carry them across coast to coast. And from this side of the country, the other side of the country, it's a good 2.5, 3 days. You got to get the run straight out there. The truck won't stop more than 30 minutes at a time. You do a 10-minute switch. You start your day. You do a 10-minute switch, 10 minutes to switch, walk around, take piss. And then you drive 5 hours. You take I think this was back when they did. This was after they had already implemented the 30-minute break, where within an 8-hour period, you have to stop and take a rest break for 30 minutes before you're able to continue. Back before this rule, which I started driving before this rule went into effect, you could just drive your full 10 hours straight. Try to take a piss in the bottle while you're moving down the road. You better believe I've done that before. Anyways, you stop 30 minutes a day. 10-minute switch, drive 5 hours. This is the way we worked it out. 30-minute lunch break, drive 5 hours, 10-minute switch. Truck never stops. 2.5, 3 days from East Coast out to West Coast. It's kind of my wanderlust. And this goes back. This is like a potent thing of the American culture. It's an imperialist culture. The whole, I would say the myth of the American cowboy. It is a myth, the myth of the American cowboy, because when you think of a cowboy, you think of John Wayne, this pilgrim, this kind of mean, gritty, and there's a lot of grit and stuff like that when you're actually out in elements. But the idea that cowboys were majority white at one point is ludicrous. The original cowboys were Mexicans. The hat, the boots, that whole thing was culturally appropriated from Mexican culture. I mean, you can see this when you turn on. It used to be Banda Max. Now it's, I think it's Video de Rola, algo así, something like that. The Mexican regional music. Mexican regional music is one of my favorite types of music, and it really is. It is the only real outlaw music that's on the radio today. If you're not in the mountains or the deep south or really, really rural area, when you turn on pop country music, it is pop country. It is not outlaw music. But if you turn on your local raza station, predominantly Mexican influenced station, you will hear legit outlaw music about having to try to make it in the conditions that the imperialists have done. And it talks about being in the lumpen proletariat, having having to deal with that stuff. I mean, some of it's positive, some is negative, but it really is that old outlaw stuff. And even stuff that's not about the lumpen proletariat, about folks like Los Tigres del Norte, talking about being undocumented and just simply trying to work, being forced to be not even being criminal, not even being part of the lumpen, forced into the lumpen proletariat element, but simply just needing to survive, to have a regular job. You're forced to be an outlaw because this country forced your country into starvation, and then you are criminalized and treated as a second-class citizen, even though you were indigenous to the continents, which is insane, absolutely insane. So I thought I was interesting. You kind of get this wanderlust wanting to travel. The original, this is interesting. In the 1930s and 40s, the Communist Party had a youth group, and the youth group was called the Young Pioneers. Now, that would never pass today. Rightfully so. It's somewhat problematic because the pioneers were part of the conquering of indigenous people and spreading infrastructure into indigenous territory that later on the imperialists used. So, I mean, it's kind of problematic. But think about the idea of the pioneer, this kind of grit, struggle, face against the elements, trying to make something that isn't there's, this very ambitious, it isn't entirely bad. And that's what I want to, that's kind of my theme of Anti-Imperialist America. Anti-Imperialist America is militantly in solidarity with oppressed nations, with indigenous people, with Chicanos, with Afro-America. But I'm trying to take out and weed out the positive cultural elements and the positive, understandings that currently exist in today's society and build on them for a positive revolution. I am trying to tear down the systems of injustice, but that's not my only want. I also, a revolutionary's primary goal is not to destroy. A revolutionary's goal is to build a better future and to improve the conditions of the people, improve the conditions of the working class and the oppressed nations. And I think that is lost on a lot of people because I think there is a labor aristocracy in the United States, and it's dwindling. But because we got a large labor aristocracy, a lot of working people historically in the last few decades did not get into communism to improve their conditions. People got into communism because they were rebelling against their parents. They're rebelling against society. So it's simply, I don't like your society. Fuck you, man. I'm going to do it how I want to, which isn't, which is not exactly what we need. I think more in the third world, you see that people get into communism to improve their conditions because their conditions suck. So, I mean, and you don't see all this sectarianism. Well, you do see the sectarian a little bit more. You do see sectarianism in the third world, but not nearly as much here. This cancel culture, this, you meet a leftist, and leftists hate each other. You're well, I do hate the Trotskyites, but that's more of a Western phenomenon. If you go to the third world with legitimate communists, they all love Stalin and Mao. The Trotskyites are a very slim minority. And I think Trotskyism appeals to the petty bourgeois, which are more like, and the petty bourgeois and the technocrats that are more likely to be in the Western countries. So Trotskyism is kind of, emblematic of the West. Trotskyism is European centric. Trotsky called Stalin Asiatic. Said he wasn't a real European revolutionary because Stalin was too Asiatic. Trotsky was a racist. Yes. Trotsky should be canceled. But I digress. So when you talk about, I call it, city building, revolutionary, patriotic, socialism, essentially what the third world has done. If you look at the recent election in Peru, that party came to power by a coalition of anti-neoliberal forces. Chavez came to power on a coalition of anti-neoliberal forces. Maduro was a successor to Chavez, but Morales in Bolivia came to a coalition of anti-neoliberal, anti-imperialist forces. So I think as revolutionaries of our current time period, we have to look at, what people have done in recent years. I mean, Mao, the greatest revolutionary in our time, was kind of an anarchist, and his focus was on the peasants, which makes sense because even though Russia was a predominantly agricultural society, they had a more developed proletariat than China. And when, the communist revolution took place in China, it really was the peasants led by Mao that took over and kicked out the imperialists, freed 1/5 of the world from imperialism. And that was Mao. But this kind of, people's war strategy has not worked in the last few decades. The people who have continued the people's war strategy have been essentially terrorists in the hillside, creating trouble for working people in general. I mean, that's kind of mirrors what they used to say about Mao, but in the same regard, I mean, Mao's plan worked. I mean, this is the difference between a successful communist and an unsuccessful communist. Reality exists. What do communists do? We are scientists. We study reality. We form hypotheses on how to carry that out. We attempt those hypotheses, and then we learn from those hypotheses. We do critical critique. A lot of principled Marxist-Leninist and communist organizations, after they take part in an action, they will do principled critique of what they do. And if you've been on Working Class Revolt or been interviewed by me, I do a self-critique session after every live stream. And I do a self-critique session with myself to see, what did I say? What did I say wrong? What could I say better? Be constantly improving as a revolutionary. So, I mean, it gets into it. So, I mean, what would that look in the United States? Like revolutionary patriotism? Well, how does an imperial country, the United States and the U.S. workers, this mass media system, has convinced U.S. workers that it's in their material interests to support the empire that is keeping the majority of the world's people in poverty? Like, how do you have any type of revolutionary patriotism in that setting? And I think simply what it means to me is you love your community. You love the people around you. I mean, every person you are around, you want to have a better life. You want a better life for your kids. You want a better life for your neighbors. You want a better life for your coworkers. And you love the specific cultural elements. Like, there might be problematic, but maybe you love country music, or maybe you love Southern food, or maybe you love, basic cultural itself is not a bad thing. It can be from a despicable, horrible empire. And you have to piece through these, what of it is why, really study and get to know your own culture and understand what's good about it and what's bad about it, what to take on and continue and what to throw away. Because if you try to throw away everything, you just become depressed and lost And that is what postmodernism is. Postmodernism is there is no truth. There is no reality. I can simply do whatever I want to do, and I don't have to care about my own consequences. And, it's all about how we perceive things. There is no material reality. And you see that with a lot of our culture and a lot of the music, a lot of the depressing music, a lot of the film, a lot of the philosophy. A lot of our culture is postmodernist, where they don't believe in a reality, where there can't be anything good. Like this is why they call communists the same as fascists, because fascists believed in something horrible. Fascists wanted to destroy for the benefit of finance capital. Communists want to build for a better future. They believe in something. Material reality exists. There's real enemies to go against. There's real decisions that we have to make. This is the difference between a communist, a revolutionary communist ideology and the more postmodern understanding that it affects our society today. So let's talk about Proletarian Father's Day. Now, in the United States, we have this idea of the nuclear family from the nuclear age. And it's interesting that the nuclear family was really, to believe it or not, I think is really an adaptation of the Soviet family. Because the Soviet family was a strong structure that helped them industrialize at unprecedented rates. What the Soviet Union did from 1920s up into World War II, and then for the period after World War II, up until about Stalin's death, they had the most backwards country in Europe, industrialized at unprecedented rates, and then defeated the Nazis. And then when in World War II, a large part of their country was completely destroyed. And then they were able to build their country back up and then invent space travel. I mean, they had problems along the way. There was issues with stagnation, but it really was the Soviet family structure, that strong structure, that kind of held them together. And it wasn't exactly the U.S. nuclear family, because they had free healthcare, education, amazing, one of the best educational systems in the world. There was less stress. But the U.S. nuclear family, which, evolved out of, crises with overproduction. So how did the nuclear family develop out of crises of overproduction? Well, let's look back on this. The stock market was rising in the 1920s. People were buying cars. This was new technology. Henry Ford. The U.S. was growing at rapid paces from new technology. Cars were becoming more available. And the economy was expanding. People were buying new things. I think you had a lot more in the 1920s. You had more extended family structures and things like that. It really wasn't up until the 1940s and 50s that you started to get this U.S. Nuclear family. Why did you get the U.S. nuclear family? Well, let's say you have an extended family living in a house, and they all share. Or let's go back to tribes. Tribes would live, in makeshift houses. This is in every tribe. Less formal structures. And they were closer together and able to share communal cooking spaces. And, and how is a communal what if you have one stove for a whole village? That isn't exactly conducive to selling products to a consumer base. After World War I and World War II, you had, the U.S. during World War II, you had the massive expanse of the military-industrial complex. But you also had, an expansion of the industrial economy. You had a destruction of all the other competing industrial economies. So, Germany was destroyed, Japan was destroyed. So that led to a boom in car manufacturing. But it also led to developments like the suburbs of people, off the GI Bill. This is highly segregated, no doubt. Off the GI Bill, they were able to buy homes, and they need stuff to fill those homes. Every house needed a refrigerator. Every home needed a car. And this is really what helped expand and provided markets for U.S. goods to prevent overproduction. And I think up until 1950, this kept going, 1950s, 1960s. And then you start to get into some more trouble with overproduction, and you get wars. And this trying to stop communism. They've expanded so much their own market. Now they got to take on other countries, and they're coming into conflict with the competing economic system of the Soviet Union. Then you got the war in Korea. You got the war in Vietnam. All this other bullshit. So, let's think about Father's Day. U.S. holidays. Let's think about that. U.S. holidays where holidays in general are all about buying shit for people. I'm trying to say, oh, I love my, the nuclear family, which is a perfect consumer unit and producing unit. Make up these holidays. And then, majority of retail sales happen on Christmas. These socially constructed holiday things are major components of our economy of chaos, essentially, where people's livelihoods, whether they can eat or not, is dependent on whether people want to buy, consumer goods at Christmas. And it's like, oh my God, it's so chaotic and insane. And when something really does hit, like COVID or this bullshit capitalism, completely unprepared, while socialist systems are prepared, because socialism is a more effective, stronger system. Socialism is when you control the means of production in a way that benefits the people and not for profit. So what that means is, because you're organizing things for the benefit of the people, some hard hits, you can reshape and reform it to benefit the people. Now, capitalism, it's not profitable to provide masks. It's not profitable to provide all these things to deal with the COVID. People make things not for use, but to sell as a commodity on the market. But what does this mean culturally? Does it mean fatherhood is a corporate concept completely void? The love I have for my son and the love I have for my own father, is that all there for the benefit of capitalism? I don't think so. These are real bonds. These are real things. We have different variations of society going back to Hunter. It's not stable. There isn't one set thing. I think you should read, Engels' History of the Family. I believe that's the name of it. But at the same time, these are real structures that people hold, and real values that people hold, and they're positive. So what would a socialist family look like? And I think, if you look at, the Soviet Union, it was the very beginnings of the nuclear family. There is wonderful things about having, a mom, dad, and children. Or, there's different types of family. You might have a gay couple or a trans couple, or you might have several families living together. But the idea of a smaller, family unit that helps take care of each other and shares this bond and that is positive for society, and it helps raise people and bring people up for it and fruition. There's this you got different forms of that. I think there's this wonderful movie called The Wild and Wonderful Whites of West Virginia. And The Wild and Wonderful Whites of West Virginia is really about an oppressed region in the United States. It's about Appalachia. And there was a lot of, parents that, after the coal mines went under or became more efficient, there wasn't any work, and people got hooked on drugs, and people got killed, people got hurt in the mines that were dangerous to begin with. And there was a lot of kids without parents. So this lady in a white family kind of took on all these kids, but the kids, even though she took them in and tried her best, They still had those problems and issues. And the white family was notorious for being lumpen proletariat. And in the movie, The Wild and Wonderful Whites of West Virginia, it really, it shows them selling pills and, not having good infrastructure. And it was a really sad movie, a really sad documentary about a really exploited group of people. Right? But it just goes to show you, even the absence of the family structure, other families try to take on and keep things going and raise people. And I think the goal of a socialist government, which is to improve society and material conditions, should make things easier for families. It shouldn't try to tear families apart. We got to be constructive, but our entire ideal is not to deconstruct what we have, is to build on and expand the good that exists. So we should, and capitalism has really destroyed the extended family. I mean, because we rely on the capitalist system for our health insurance, our wages, our work. We have our nuclear family, and then we have capitalism. Really before, going back to indigenous society or even feudal society, and even more if you look at social structures in Mexico compared to the United States, the people in Mexico are more likely to have extended, better, more intact, extended family structures. And then when I'm noticing a lot of Mexican folks move here, they tend to keep that because they're in absolute horrible conditions. And you need several families living in the same house to get that. But once you get out of that, you move and you start making a little more money. This society makes it beneficial to have the nuclear family unit, and a lot of people lose ties with their extended family. And capitalism forces, just like it does to people fleeing war in the Middle East, and it does to people feeling poverty in Central America and Mexico, it tears family apart. So you got these, these so-called conservative people. They're saying they're all about the family. They're all about the family. When they're supporting imperialist policies, they're tearing families apart. And this is no more obvious when, Trump, had kids in cages at the border. But what the Democrats won't tell you is there's 4 times as many kids in cages now, and they're not even talking about it. I think a lot of our movements, the immigrants' right movement, are manipulated by the nonprofit industrial complex to support the Democratic Party. It's fucked up. And what I'm promoting is working of, for, and by the people, working class socialism. Demand a government of action to fight for working families. And to be able to get that, we're not going to be able to go through the Democratic Party. We are going to have to go through we're going to have to build our own insurgent, community-based power organizations on the community level and in the labor level as well. So happy Father's Day, everyone. I think that will conclude my opening remarks. Fatherism, happy Father's Day, the nuclear family, imperialism. I covered a lot of topics. It was a bit of a rant. It wasn't, some of my best work, but those are just some of the thoughts I have right now. Status, ahoy, comrades. Well, it's very good to have you here. And Ace Frank Show, R.I.P. Dad, 1969 to 1917. I see you again in the afterlife. Well, my condolences, Ace Frank Show. A very sad and bittersweet Father's Day, and good vibes and wishes coming from my family to yours. Dylan Smale. I once took the All Recruiters brochure and papers and threw them in the trash. Yes, Smale, if you are a high school student, I recommend you not to be nice to the recruiters. Recruiters there are to send your neighbors and not the ones doing well off. The recruiters in your high school are there to convince the poorest and most exploited people to go and be cannon fodder to exploit and oppress other poor black and brown people. And we do not want that. We should spread class consciousness, anti-imperialism. And also we can just fuck with them. And I think that's a very good praxis. That is great. I know the anarchist and synthetic light likes to say some praxis bullshit. But honestly, that is good practice. If you're in high school or just in public, throw out the recruitment brochures. Even I did counter recruitment in high school. I had thrown out many recruitment brochures. I've gone around town picking up this was years back. It probably won't get in trouble saying it. I went around picking up the National Guard signs that were posted all over and throw them out. I've done some shit like that. And it's absolutely true, comrade. Thank you. Juan Bermudez, hello. Right on. Hello, comrades. Got the comrade from the Netherlands with us. And hello, comrades. Very glad to have you here. If you want to get a discussion or comments that will help me go further, I'm going to read these and end it if I don't see any comments or questions. You got a question to ask me, put it in the comments. I recommend all comrades to watch Panama Deception. There is also a version in Spanish with Spanish subtitles. Okay, I got to check that out. Panama Deception. Capitalism makes people to choose illusion over reality. That's very good. Thank you. And really, this postmodernist society, there is no truth. And the idea of bourgeois democracy in general simply alienates and separates, forces within the working class and within the leftist movement, and allows the real power, the monopoly capitalists, to maintain their power. Because if we care about something, we actually want to change something, or if we want to actually build power, then we're not allowed to do it. And it really is this kind of Trotskyite wrecking ball, that goes around and says, oh, you're not the real revolution. You're not the real revolution, and attacks that. And they're used to justify U.S. attacks in Syria and used to attack sanctions against Venezuela, sanctioned against our brothers and sisters in Iran, because they're not pure socialists, because they're not my idea. I only want my idea that has never existed. Material reality, real scientific socialism. And this is my analysis. My analysis, I'm not trying to look. I build blueprints for the current conditions. I have a 3-step plan. If I was to come to power, I have a 3-step plan. Step number 1, end the wars, stop police brutality, stop the imperialist wars. Number 2, nationalize the main centers of economic activity, nationalize the oil companies, nationalize the banks, use the heights of the means of production for the benefit of the people and not the capitalist class. And number 3 would be expand the productive forces as quickly as possible and expand them in a way that meets the needs of the people. That is my 3-step plan towards socialism. How do we get to socialism? We need mass grassroots insurgency. We need people like the Brown Berets and Partido Raza Unida, who are holding things down in Aslan. We need groups like the Black Panthers and the Young Lords, and the Young Patriots from the original Black Panther Coalition. And then we need our gay brothers and sisters and our even trans rights organizations. If they're fighting for workers' rights, they're still part of the movement in general. The major class lines. This is another thing about material reality. There are main contradictions. So we're not class reductionists. We're not race reductionist. We're not gender reductionist, but we're anti-imperialism. And anti-imperialism is monopoly capitalism. Monopoly capitalism is not another issue. And imperialism is not another issue. Imperialism is the entire political economic system where a few banking oil cartels based in the United States and London keep the entire world poor and the working class and the imperial core poor at the same time. So when you want to form coalitions and powers against that, They did that in Venezuela. They did that in Bolivia. They recently did that in Peru. And even AMLO in Mexico is an example of an anti-neoliberal coalition that is doing good things for the workers. And this is the idea of international solidarity on the issue of imperialism. If something is good for a poor worker in Mexico to get a loan from the government or pay less gas prices from a nationalized petroleum sector, that is another dollar not going to the big monopoly capitalists and banks. If Mexico can feed its people and build infrastructure, the reason why Mexico is poor is not because it's a poor country. It is a rich country. Countries are rich. I'm quoting Parenti. Countries are rich, but they're overexploited. And they're not underdeveloped because they're developed wrongly. They're developed in ways that allows for the max exploitation and super profits of that country by the monopoly capitalists. So when you have even a national revolution with flaws and all, if it increases the benefits of the people, it is cutting out the profits of the monopoly capitalists to do so. So a win anywhere for an exploited person or a worker is a win for an exploited people and workers everywhere. International solidarity. An injury to one is a victory for all. This is why I support Assad. This is why I support Iran. This is why I support AMLO. I support any leader and any political structure that is lifting working class and oppressed people out of poverty. And when working class people and oppressed people are lifted out of poverty, that is another cent and another dollar taken out of the hands of our enemy that spends that spend this money on these huge election frauds, that spends this money on this massive propaganda machine, that spends the money on police forces to suppress us, that spends the money on so-called cybersecurity to spy on us when we want to organize a union. This is how these things are connected. We need an international coalition of oppressed people and workers to fight against the imperialists. Anti-imperialism is today's class struggle. Anti-imperialism is today's class struggle. All right. Let's see. Let's keep going. Shout out to, we got a brown beret with us. I'm sorry I can't pronounce your name, sister, but I'm glad you're here and I'm glad you're listening. I would love to have you on the show at one point if you want to reach out to me. And thank you for all the work you do out in Aslan, building community power to fight against the imperialist scum. Dylan Smale, I can't believe I spelled through. It's all right. We all spell stuff different. We got this bullshit capitalist education. Come check it out in the South. Come check out the schools in the South. It's absolutely horrible. Shandan, Dust, IDs. It healthy to talk about politics in the workplace. That's interesting. So you go to work, you can't out your cover. You know what I'm trying to say? You got to be cool about this. Like I'm on here, I got to trade when I'm at work, a lot of the people around you are snitches. And they will go right to the boss. The second you say good shit about a union, they're going to go to the boss and snitch on you. So you got to be really careful about talking with politics in the workplace. Maybe you can get in a word here or a word there, but you being able to provide for your family, come back and then build political organization at maybe outside the workplace is important. And if you are going to build power with inside the workplace, you got to be strategic about it. You got to know who the enemies are. I always talk about this. You want to inform the proletariat and the workers to the most and try to hide everything you can for the enemy. And everything you do, you're going to take risks, but you have to take calculated risks. There we go. Small. Best question to ask a recruiter. Who is in your class? What does this have to do with insert class subject? That's interesting. That's interesting. What does this have to do with psychology? What does it have to do with math? I mean, they can come up with a bunch of shit on that. I always like to say the war, they're not fighting for our freedom. Like, what good did the war in Afghanistan do for people here? Why is our freedom in Afghanistan? Why they got to go all the way over to Afghanistan to get our freedom? They don't. Brian Holden. Hello, Dust. Good discussion as usual. Right on. Arthur Porter. Hey, Arthur Porter, right on. That new book for the Center for Political Innovation, talking about BreadTube. That was a cool cover, man. And I'm glad you're here, and I'm glad you like it. Hey guys, did Pedro win in Peru? Yes, he did. Yes, he did. Cowboy hat, pencil, straight up, anti-neoliberalist, anti-imperialist coalition of exploited people to build a government that can improve the lives of an oppressed nation. That is beautiful. Political and economic power of poor Black and brown people. Political and economic power of poor Black and brown people is anti-imperialism and is the way forward. This imperialist system, which sucks us dry, which destroy, you say socialists suck us dry. No, it's the imperialist system that will suck you dry. It's the imperialist system that will destroy. That will destroy us, divide our families, pound us in the dirt, and make us feel like there ain't no hope to go forward. But as we, the community, the working class and oppressed people, to come together and form coalitions and build political and economic power of poor Black and brown people, that which is and not compromise power in the Democratic Party, but power of, for, and by the people, of, for, and by the oppressed and working class people themselves. And right on, gracias. Yay. And Arthur Porter, thank you for kind words. And Comrade Ace, Comrade Jeffrey is proud. All right. So I think I've been going on for about an hour. If that's all going to do it, I'd like to thank everyone for being with there. Please share this out. Maybe watch it afterwards. And as always, comrades,